The gospel today comes to us from the Gospel of Mark, the 13th chapter, beginning with the 24th verse. Jesus said, "In those days after that suffering, the sun will be darkened, and the moon won't give its light, and the stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. Then they'll see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. Then he'll send out the angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven. From the fig tree learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts forth its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see these things taking place, you know that he is near, at the very gates. Truly, I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. Heaven and earth may pass away, but my words will not pass away. But about that day or hour, no one knows, neither the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. Beware, keep alert, for you do not know when the time will come. It's like a man going on a journey when he leaves home and puts his slaves in charge, each with his work, and commands the doorkeeper to be on the watch. Therefore keep awake, for you don't know when the master of the house will come, in the evening, or at midnight, or at cockcrow, or at dawn, or else he may find you asleep when he comes suddenly. And what I say to you, I say to all, stay awake." The Gospel of the Lord. Please be seated. The bend in the creek. It's where I stopped in my exploration of the creek near my neighborhood. My neighborhood resides between Route 70 and Interstate 40, but there's a surprisingly large wooded area with a surprisingly nice and wide creek running through it. I had gone to explore some of that creek. I had explored off towards 70 and found that the sun was starting to get low and that I better turn back before I get stuck in an unfamiliar woods without being able to see anything. I got back to the point where I would normally exit the woods, and I decided I'm going to just take a quick sneak peek at what lies ahead. So I moved ahead, and I moved ahead a little ways, and I found a big bend in the creek. And that's where I realized that I can't go farther right now, or I'm going to end up tripping over logs and running into thorns on the way back, and so I went home, vowing to myself that I would come back, and I would explore beyond the bend in the creek. So I left that bend in the creek behind physically, but I kept wondering about it. What's beyond the bend? How far is it before the creek reaches Interstate 40? What picturesque scenes might lie beyond the bend? See, I didn't know. I had never been farther than that, never seen farther than that. What lay beyond was invisible and completely unknown to me. The bend in the creek. Now, I know that the unknown can produce different responses in each of us. For some of us, the unknown is exciting. It's this challenge, this invitation to come out and explore. We want to experience the unknown, discover what's out there, learn something new. But for others of us, the unknown is frightening. It's broadcasting an alert to us, a warning to keep away. We want to remain in the well-trodden paths, safe and secure. So we each have different reactions to the bend in the creek. To explore further or to stay away. To go where we have never gone before or to stay home, cozy and comfortable. Well, it's Advent, and we stand at the bend in the creek, facing a decision about what to do now. Now, the readings from the Advent season don't start with Christmas story references. They aren't a build-up to the remembrance of the birth of Jesus. They start instead with the unknown future. The focus of the Advent season seems to many of us, from what you can tell all around you, from the TV and the mall and every place that you go, to be about the Christmas story with its mangers and its angels. But instead, we come to church and Advent begins with no references to ancient events and stories, but instead with a bend in the creek. Chapter 13 of the Gospel of Mark is sometimes called the Little Apocalypse. And it's a story Jesus is telling us about the coming day of the Son of Man, when God will at last act in history. It's cast into the future, not the past. It's about a future coming of the Son of Man and the transformation of the whole world. It urges the reader to remain on the ready, to be alert, because it's coming, and it's coming soon. And yet it contains no specifics, no dates. And our gospel lesson is very aware of this, containing the admonition from Jesus that about that day or hour no one knows, neither the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. Beware, keep alert, for you don't know when the time will come. It's the bend in the creek. It's the unknown future. What's coming? When is it coming? What will this transformation be like? What lies beyond the bend in the creek? The main thrust of Mark 13 is that it's all unknown. Some people would place this bend in the creek off in some distant future. Some would place it in the imminent present, or even in the realm of metaphor. But aren't we always facing the bend in the creek? Advent is a bend in the creek for all of Christianity, but there are other bends that affect smaller groups like denominations and individual congregations. Struggling churches, of which there are many, almost always stand at a bend in the creek. And around that bend could be just about anything. But one thing we can be certain about here is that beyond the bend in the creek lies change. Whatever is around the bend in the creek is going to be different from what we've seen before. Maybe very different, maybe subtly different, but different all the same. And there's a choice that has to be made. Do we round the bend into the uncharted territory that lies beyond? Or do we turn back to where we feel more at home, more comfortable, safer? Well, trying to be true to my promise to myself, I did go back to the woods another day when it was sunny, and I explored beyond that bend in the creek. Just a little ways past that major bend was a small island sitting out in the middle of this wide creek, something I think is worth seeing. I'm an island kind of guy. And still farther along, there were large rocks creating rapids and little waterfalls. And even further, there were other bends in the creek. I pursued the creek all the way to where it goes under Interstate 40 in some very unsafe-looking tunnels, and I have no intention of ever exploring into or beyond those tunnels. But parts of the creek were very beautiful, picturesque, inspiring even. And I wouldn't have seen them, and I wouldn't have seen the island if I had stopped at that bend in the creek. I don't know how much we can say about Mark 13's bend in the creek, except to say that perhaps it's one of those things that, as they say, you just have to trust to God. There's not much control. There's not even any awareness of it for ordinary people. Many would say it's all just in God's hands. Our task is just simply to be ready, to stay awake. But what about other bends in the creek? What about the unknown future that awaits all of us, the choices that we have to make? What hopes and dangers might await us around the bend in the creek? What can we do about them? And what does God call us to do about them? Passages like Mark 13 and the parallel passages in Matthew tell us to be open to the unknown, to the unforeseen. They advise us to live in the trust that there is a future. But they don't tell us much of anything about it. They tell us to trust that God will gather God's people, though we know no details about it. And maybe we remember some of the other readings, like a recent one from Revelation that told us about how God's people are being made up of folks from all nations and all languages. And Advent tells us to keep awake stay alert that God will be doing something, and we're somehow a part of it. One of the facets of the unknown, of going beyond the bend in the creek, is risk. To go beyond where you've gone before always entails risk. And risk is our business. Risk is a foundational call of the gospel for any Christian. Spreading the good news is a risk. Acting in faith and love is risk. The gospel isn't about rolling over and hitting the snooze alarm one more time, staying safe and comfortable until God fixes everything for us. The gospel is about risk, and risk is our business. The bend in the creek is risk. For any church to grow and survive, risk is necessary to step into the unknown future. It's a risk to invite new people, knowing that they'll be different from us. But it's the bend in the creek. We can take the risk and explore further, invite new people in, people who are different from us, people who have different ideas and feelings than we do, but who are nevertheless children of the same God and followers of the same gospel. Or we can turn back at the bend in the creek and leave that bend for someone else to explore. Advent is a call into the unknown, trusting in God. Advent is a call to go past the bend in the creek and see what's out there, what new and different things we might see. Advent is a call to risk, to accept the inevitability of change. Advent is the call to welcome and to actively seek the people who are very like us and who are very unlike us. It's the call to welcome the conservative old lady and the young woman with facial piercings. It's a call to go and find them wherever we can, in our own neighborhood, on the internet, or wherever else you can think of to look. This is what will carry us beyond the bend in the creek. To be choosy or exclusive will only keep us where we are. This is Advent. Yes, it's about preparing for the coming of Jesus, both past and future, but it's also about the bend in the creek and the unknown future that lies beyond it. And it's about a choice to work to be prepared or to be comfortable. And we can't do both at the same time. It's about risk while trusting God. It's about going where we've never gone before with the blessing and call of God, leading us into a beautiful and new region full of hope and beauty. It's about the hope and transformation that can be found only in risking and taking those first steps beyond the bend in the creek. So come on. Let's go. Amen.